Wow, I love that acknowledgement that I am light. And so as we explore the theme of awareness, we are aware or becoming aware, or in a moment we can instantly know that we are light. And so we're moving into a new era, a new consciousness, where we're moving from the law of attraction to the law of radiance. And that's really what I want to spend some time on today, a recognition that in this time when we're moving into the solstice, we're moving into the longest night. And I have sat in a lot of New Thought centers over the last 30 years, hearing people say that quite possibly the lesson there is that we then shift into moving more into the light. But I actually want to take it a little bit deeper today, a little bit different awareness. And that is, what if there was nothing at all wrong with the longest night? What if we could embrace all of it as spiritual? You know, Teilhard, someone here knows when Teilhard was alive, who came to say that we are shifting from recognizing we're human beings having a spiritual experience into spiritual beings having a human experience. And what's happening right now in consciousness, and that each one of us in this room each one of us is called to be this, and that is we're shifting into spiritual beings having a spiritual experience. And what that means to me in the conversation of the light is that we're no longer in a place where we want to reject something that we call negative. One of the things that's happened for me in the most profound way in terms of spiritual evolution is reframing and relanguaging everything that I've ever been taught. And I really love your story about the elephants. How powerful to recognize that when we were little, when I was little, I was taught a lot of, okay? And some of it has kept me feeling stuck. So I came into this world, I remember coming to this world and really knowing my own light and being an expansive little kid that was so present and so in awe of the world and so joy-filled. I can remember that. I can also remember an occasion or two or three or four where I started to lose that awareness. And that came through ropes that were being tied as the metaphor for the elephant. Now, I don't think that there's anyone to blame for that. I remember my mother saying, you know, you seemed so sensitive that I became afraid for you and what the world was going to do to you. So here, her consciousness, right? The world is going to do it to me. So I can't possibly blame her because her intention was to try to keep me safe, that motherly instinct to try to keep me safe. And perhaps it did on one level. And there was this, well, it really didn't on one level. It really didn't, because I did go into the world being this little sensitive boy, and it wasn't so celebrated in 1970s in Indiana when I was growing up. I was called quite a few names, as a matter of fact. And at one point I said, I got to a place where I would start saying to them, you're so smart. You notice so many things, when they would call me the F word. We all know what word it is. So I came into a world radiating light and radiating love. And it's my experience that we all come into this world radiating that love and that light. And then we come into different family systems, cultures, communities, possibly even religions, that begin to teach us that there's something fundamentally broken here. And when I believe that I'm fundamentally broken, I have that rope that is tying me to whatever I'm tied to, that at one point I didn't actually have the strength to overcome. And then because, as the story said so beautifully, because I have grown up and now have the strength to really create my own life, to shift my consciousness, to change my thinking, to tune into a different frequency, I have the ability to move beyond any ropes that have ever been tied around my feet or my legs. But sometimes I don't know that. But I don't know until I know. So we might come into New Thought, Unity teachings, and we begin to hear things like, my thoughts create. The perspective I have about the world is what's creating reality. You mean I have some power here? That was revolutionary for me. when I walked into my first Unity Church in 1988. And I began to embark on this journey of recognizing and changing my language and recognizing and changing the perception that I was a victim to the world or that the world was doing it to me. And the only way I could break that cycle is to strive and to compete and to struggle. There was a strong message in my family that life is not fair and life is a struggle. Thank you for laughing, because it's funny. You got that one too, right? We have to work really hard. That's that Midwestern work ethic, right? And I remember thinking, God, I don't know that I want to really work so hard. So when I came into this teaching, I began to recognize that I could actually affect or change my reality based on my thinking. And then there was a turning point, or a point where something much deeper was being called. And that was a recognition that it's not just about thinking. It's not just about my perception. It's really about the frequency that I'm tuning into. And I believed, because I had this deep programming, or this rope, if you will, that taught me that I had to do it perfectly in order to achieve competition, scarcity, not enoughness, that I applied that to my spirituality. I'm going to learn how to be the perfect affirmer, the perfect prayer. I'm going to learn all these unity principles, darn it, and I'm going to get it right. And it worked really well for a long time, but there was this deeper yearning for something more. And I believed that I needed to attain something, that my spirituality somehow was out there, and that if I could do it perfectly and I could get there, I would be okay. It actually didn't occur to me beyond my thoughts that it was already inherently who and what I am. Now, I had been hearing that. I'd been hearing that in Unity teachings. Hearing it and living it, I recognized were two not completely different things, because the learning it, the hearing it, the practicing it leads us to the being it. And that's really what I want to focus on today, is the solstice and what that might mean in the new paradigm, and Christmas and what that story might mean in the new paradigm. So what if, rather than thinking we need to reject the darkness in any way, we can actually know that it's fertile ground for new growth? And that embracing what we call the darkness is actually already just a story in my mind. We've been taught to reject and cling. And that, of course, is the Buddhist definition of suffering. What if I could embrace it all? What if I could recognize that there's no such thing as a negative feeling? What if I could recognize that lean into this one, there's no such thing even as negative thinking? I can shift it to, is this thinking getting me where I want to be? Do you hear the difference in energy? It might be semantics, right? Because I'm still wanting to change my thoughts or change the thoughts I attach to. Thoughts come and go. The issue for most of us is we believe we're supposed to do something with them, or we believe that we are them. I believe I am my thoughts and my perspectives. And in that way, I'm going to frame some of them as negative and some of them as positive and begin to reject and claim. But what if I could say, wow, this thinking gets me here, and here isn't so great, isn't so comfortable, isn't so fun. I don't find joy there. So I can begin to reframe it and say, what if I could embrace it all and lean into it, and then recognize through that, it's not really acceptance, it's allowance. Through the allowance, I can then start to choose in a very different way which frequency I'm tuning into. And for me, it seems to have, it's a twofold process. What do I need to look at, question, unlearn, release, whatever word we use, and how do I spend time in the silence, in that place of silence? And I don't necessarily just mean meditation, although that is a powerful practice, but I recognize that practicing was practicing for how we're going to be in the world. So what if the intention of meditation is to practice how I'm going to be 24/7? Every moment, moment by moment, a shift, a recognition, a knowing that we can tune right back into the deeper frequency. That frequency that is God, or that is Source. And if we know, we practice unity's first principle, there is only one power and one presence active in the world and in my life. I know everyone has a little different version of that. God the good omnipotent, meaning that God's source energy, love, it's everywhere, it's who I am in no way separate from it, we're each perfect emanations. I think that's the Big Bang. Source energy. So we go out into the world being that, and sometimes we forget that, so it's about a returning to it. So what if the solstice wasn't about moving into more light, but about being the light in the midst of that, and also embracing what we might call darkness? In my own journey, as I started to wake up to a greater reality, things showed up for me to take a look at. My lifelong held beliefs, ideas, perspectives, my limitations, all of that got to show up. I didn't have to go digging. As I started to wake up to a greater reality, all that came up for its healing. So rather than rejecting that, can we lean in? I want to talk about something for a moment here that I think sometimes is difficult to talk about in terms of how to language it, because we don't want to do, or I'm choosing not to do what we call a spiritual bypass, which is like everything's great, everything's love and light, I don't have any feelings about this, because I know this community's in transition right now, so let's name it, right, let's name that, and there's two things I want to say about it. I was making a joke, I don't know if it was Darwin or Einstein that said it, but it doesn't matter, because either one of them are awesome, right? It's not the strongest species that survives, but the one most adaptable to change. Probably Darwin. Probably Darwin, right? The most adaptable to change. And so as we move into a transition in the outer realm, like what's happening in this community, can we, one, honor our emotions around it, not do a bypass, and maybe, bypasses might seem easier, like, oh no, everything's love and light, I'm not having any feelings about this, it's all good, we're all good, everything's good. Why do I feel like this though? The key to me is a very simple equation that's easy maybe to understand, and then we get to practice, and that is, can I honor my emotional experience without the story? Because the story is what keeps me stuck. They shouldn't be doing this. This shouldn't be happening. Why are we going through this? I loved it this way. What's happening here? Right? The story. And then we might find a little, well, let's see. Yeah, this is fine. We might find a little cohort over here, and then we might share the same story, and then we start telling the story. And then the story gets magnified, and then someone over here, this little group, we have a different story about it. Right, so then the stories start coming to the surface, and then what happens? Conflict, right? What if we said conflict is awesome? Conflict is wonderful. Because it allows us to see where we're in our story. When I feel like there's conflict in my life, and conflict's always, 100% of the time, inside of me, right? Inside of me, because I'm accountable, 100% accountable for my perspective and the energy that I'm tuned into and the energy I'm radiating. So here's the key with the spiritual bypass for me. I honor my emotions without bypassing them, and I notice if I'm in a story. Am I in a story? One way we know we're in a story is we keep telling everyone. And it can often start with, can you believe, or why? Why is always a story. It's always a story. So if you hear yourself, if I hear myself asking why, I'm in a story. Why is this happening? While also honoring the deeper feelings. So, as part of this community, I'm sure, because I feel the energy when I'm here, people have a deep love for this community. There's a deep sense of love and connection here. And so when there's a change, we might notice that something gets activated. It might be abandonment that gets activated. It might be a little bit of anger. It might be a little self-righteousness. It might be a lot of things. And what if we were to say, I'm not going to reject that today. I'm going to own it. But the key is I'm going to own that it's mine. No one triggers me. Only I can do that. And the reason I say it that way is if I notice myself getting what we might call triggered, I can move into what is this touching? It's healing if I allow it to heal. That activation, that point, I'm like, oh, wow, look, here's a place that's asking for me to open up to more love, to being love, to recognizing that in the center of absolutely anything happening, I have a choice to be the light or be in the story. And it doesn't mean, what I'm not saying is we're not going to honor our perspective, but see if you can notice, are you in your story? Are you in your emotion? Are you being present with what is? We all have a role to play here, and we're all one. So what I want to move into in the last few minutes is the Christmas story in the new paradigm, and what the story of the birth actually means. Jesus the Christ came and said, I am the light of the world. And a lot of people heard that as he was the light of the world and that we are not the light of the world. Jesus was one of the most profound mystics that's ever lived. There have been a lot of mystics. There are mystics on the planet right now. What is a mystic? A mystic is one that recognizes that it's all happening within me. I'm 100% accountable. I listen to that inner voice. I trust that spirit, the ultimate me, is actually the most powerful energy in the universe. Whether we call that love, source, light. That is so much stronger than anything happening in the world. Anyone in a political position, any strife, any ism that's happening. We know that source energy is actually so much more powerful than that. So the Christmas story, as it relates to the new paradigm, which is the paradigm of oneness, the paradigm where each of us in this room is a great mystic. And again, what if a mystic is simply one that knows that we know that we know that that inner truth is more powerful than anything in the world? And that we are no longer run by the conditions of our life. Now, for most of us, or most humans I've met, it's a moment-to-moment reminder, and sometimes it feels like a process. But it's one breath away at every moment, one breath away of knowing a deeper reality for ourselves. And then in that way, the birth of the light, which is the story, is the birth of the light that happens within us every single moment that we're willing to see it. What if it's not a process? What if the unfoldment, the awakening, is a simple recognition that enlightenment is already present within each of us? I simply untie the rope, pull the rope. Sometimes it feels like a struggle, right? We pulling that rope. A recognition that the ropes of our life, the stories, what gets taught, our limitation, our separation, our better than, our less than, our I need to get, this should be, why does this? Those are all ropes, right? And so we can call them what they are. What if I could love those ropes? Just love them. What if I could even love the people who put them there, or who I perceive put them there? Ultimate forgiveness of those who put them there, believing, in most cases, they were trying to do something good in our lives. How many people are parents here? Repeat after me. I forgive me.
I forgive me
for continuing tying the ropes. That were tied on me. Okay, how many people have a mother or a father here? Or have ever had a mother or father, right? I think that's all of us. I forgive them for tying the ropes that were tied on them. I now have the ability to set myself free, and I'm choosing to do it right now. I am the light of the world. I choose to radiate. The moment is now. So my question in closing for each of you is very simple. Are you willing and ready to be the light of the world? Are you ready to take the call that Jesus the Christ invited us 2,000 years ago, and that Buddha invited us 2,500 years ago, and the Lao Tzu invited us? Can you hear how it's such a patriarchal? Yes. What about the women mystics? Or maybe women are all mystics automatically. Yeah, there it is. So are you ready and willing to answer the call of being the light? That's how consciousness shifts on the planet. It's not necessarily about our action, it's about our beingness. And in the midst of how we're being, whatever we choose to be, I can be the rope, I can be the story, I can be the limitation, I can be the eternal presence of love. And when I'm being that, it's not even a ripple effect. We know that we're all one, so someone on the other side of the earth feels it the moment that I acknowledge it, the moment I know it for myself. And so this is a profound new way of being in the world. It's a recognition that at this time we're called to be the light. Embrace the darkness, be the light. Recognizing that the story of Christmas is the story of the birth of the light within us. And it's not really the birth because it's already there. It's the birth of the recognition that we are light, the recognition that we are love. So each of you, myself included, we are called right now in this profound time on the planet, which we could say that any moment, to be love, to be light. That is what is wanted and needed right now. What needs to be released, what needs to be forgiven, what needs to be questioned, so that we can return to that state that we already are. No destination, just right here, a deep knowing. And as we go out into the world being that, we get to experiment with life, because it is a great experiment. We have a demonstration of an experiment of someone that says, age is not a number, right? There's a new paradigm here. And the paradigm is oneness and love. And we are it. So in closing, tag, you're it. Be the light.